When I was 7 years of age, my father died, and my mother shortly afterwards met an English fellow called Derick. He was 5 years younger than my mother. My mother was about, 32 years of age at the time. Derick used to always renew his car every year, and always dressed in a suit and tie. So for me, he was someone to look up to. He looked quite sophisticated. He was well spoken, even though he came from a working class background. I say working class, but there again, maybe middle class, because his father was a businessman who came from nowhere and had a plant, a chrome, where he used to do chromium plating. And in those days, in the 40s, 50s and 60s, he was making very good money, the father, and lived a very good life. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but his father used to help him with all the extras that he was spending, such as the car. He helped him to buy the car, he gave him money for the petrol, all sorts of things. He was getting financial help all the way along the line. But I thought he was getting it all from his job. He was a typewriter mechanic. And I thought that was well paid. It turned out, years later, I found out that he got very poor money. No, it was all down to the father. Anyway, in the 70s, I think it was, his father eventually died. And just a reminder, if you like my videos, please give me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Thank you. What happened, they lived in a nice house not far from Elephant and Castle. And just a reminder, if you like my videos, please give me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Thank you. Derick and his parents. And then the father bought a place further out of London. But of course, these days it's within the boundaries of London now. But before the houses, brand new houses, was built on top of land which was for pig farming. Norwood, South Norwood, which is now part of London. So, Derick was a child at the time, and they all moved out to the new house. Well, as soon as the mother saw the new house, she was, she wasn't satisfied. She didn't want to move, basically. And they had an argument, and the father, because he was a businessman, he had good money coming in, he could afford to leave, and he did. He left. But they owned the house, so there's no problem with rents, etc. And the father was giving the mother a certain amount of money every week. So they wasn't short of money. Father bought a beautiful place called Bewley Heights. On the top of this hill, you could see straight across London. It was amazing. Even on the bus, when you go up that hill, you can see. But he had a top floor of a Victorian house. Anyway, eventually in the 70s, the father died. So the business went to Derick. The thing about Derick, he's a bit of a skinflint. Certainly tight-fisted. And he took this business over, which was chromium plating. And when he had a secretary, and he had several men working for him who've been working there for years. He He went through the books. He was very good at that. He was intelligent. He wasn't an idiot. He went through the books and he found a lot of money was owing to the company. His father never went after people who didn't pay. Only he could do the following. So he would go around to all the people that owed money to his business. And he'd say, let's say for instance, he'd say, you owe £750. When can you pay? And the person would say, well, I can't, I haven't got any money. So he would say, well, how much you got in your pockets now? And he might pull out maybe £10 or £20. He'd say, well, I take that. I'll see you next week to get another £20. And it worked. He'd done that to all the businesses. And he said every week he made more money going around collecting debts than the company made. Can you imagine? More profit. Now, eventually, he decided he wanted to shut the place up. He couldn't be bothered doing all that. It was a lot of hard work, especially when he collected all the money from all these other companies. And he said someone, because they hated him. He used to come along and turn everything off and stuff when everyone's going home. He had to, he told me, because they used to do dirty tricks to try. What they tried to do was send his company into the ground so they could be laid off and then get a huge amount of money for being laid off. You see, that's what they was up to, trying to shut the company down. If the company went bankrupt, he would have to pay them all money, all the workers. So they would leave the electric on and all sorts of things, the gas on, anything. So yeah, he told me he had to go around the whole shop checking everything was off. Everything was in its place. One time someone got some sand, I think it was, and threw it in the oven where all the chromium plating was being cooked. Well, it destroyed all the chromium plating, of course. He still sent it off. And when he sent it off to this big company, and the company complained and wanted their money back, a refund, he told a lie. He's very good at lying. You really believed this fellow. Sometimes you do. Some people have that personality which you believe completely. White is black. It must be black if you say so, Derick. Anyway, he said to them, it was nothing to do with his company. He said, it's metal they sent him. The metal was at fault. It was the previous company who sent the metal to him. That's the ones who were at fault. And they believed it. So he said he got paid for the first job, which was botched up by one of those fellows destroying it. And then he got paid again, second time, to clean it all up, the mess, and redo it. So he got paid twice, plus more on top. Only Derick could do that. But he eventually managed to wind the company down. And he said sometimes they would get annoyed at him because they wanted more pay. So one fella came into the office, and he'd probably done this to a few of them. Came into the office, he said, I want a pay rise. And he replied, you can't have one. He said, well, if I don't get a pay rise, I'm leaving. And he would say at that point, okay, go and pick up your cards. In other words, he's given them the sack. Go and pick up your cards from Mrs. Brown. Well, they never expected that, but they've just gone and talked their way into being forced to leave. And they don't get any severance pay. And he did all sorts of things like that to get rid of everyone. And I think he ended up with just a few people at the end, a few workers, and he had to pay them off. But yeah, he managed to wound that company down and not lose any real money. And then sold it off, the premises. by this time people weren't buying much from companies like that in England. They were going to places like China, where it's cheaper, or India. When his mother was alive, I think he was in his early 60s when his mother died, Derick. And he just had a small room in the house. And I remember when he used to come and visit my mum told me that she used to ask him to come and live with her as a boyfriend. And he always refused. And he said to my mother, this is what she told me. He said, why should I leave? Why should I leave home? My mum even puts toothpaste on my toothbrush. Well, yeah, it's true. And later on, when I got to know him as a grown man, he told me that he used to go around visiting all his mates who were working class people. And they had nothing. They had a bed sit somewhere. They had absolutely nothing. He said he had a lovely home. He couldn't bring a girl back or anything. But he had a lovely home. The food was always hot in the oven waiting for him. Whatever time he turned up, in the middle of the morning from the snooker hall, it was there waiting for him, the food. And as he said, the toothpaste was always on the toothbrush. Everything was spick and span. And the mother noticed that he was a bit of a hoarder because she saw the way he kept his little box room. And she said, you should have been born a rag and bone man. Anyway, she ended up dying of a heart attack, and he was there at the time in the front room when she was hoovering. She suddenly grabbed her heart and she said, Derick, I'm going. And she went. She just smacked straight into the floor and dead. She was an old woman by then, I think probably 80, in her 80s. And his sister, I saw a picture of her when she was young. She was a nice little girl when she was young. Him and his sister was in the picture frame. And you know, it just amazes me how such a nice little girl, a normal looking girl, could turn out to be what she turned out to be. She looked like a witch, a real hag in old age. And what happened was, I think she was a closeted gay woman. And she had a good time going out with all their friends when she was younger, you know, from the office. She worked in an office. But then each of her friends, in turn, got married. And she was suddenly all alone. And she had a nervous breakdown. And after that, she was never the same. I don't think she went back to work after that. I'm not sure now. I can't remember. But I know in old age, she became totally reliant on him. And the trouble is, she hated men. And yet Derick was a man. Her brother was a man. And she hated men. And she was relying on him for so many things because she became an invalid. She used to sleep on the couch downstairs in the sitting room and sit on that couch all day. Terrible. Didn't go anywhere. And as I said, I saw her in old age and she looked like a witch, an old hag. It was terrible. Oh, I was really shocked. And also she had the voice of a witch. Hello, Thomas. Oh, it was awful. Oh. Because Derick was a handsome fellow when he was a young man. He never cracked up. He was just, he just had bad habits. He was a hoarder. As soon as his mother died, he started hoarding everything. He would find things on the streets and bring it back and keep them as if they're blocks of gold. And I'm the opposite to that. I'm clean and tidy. I don't like hoarding things like that. In fact, I give stuff away to the charity instead of hoarding them. And when I went around there later on as a grown man to see him, and his sister's gone by now, because I couldn't go and visit him when the sister's there. She didn't like visitors, you see. He used to use a piss pot in the just inside the door. You come in the front door and there's a passageway there, and he'd have a piss pot there because otherwise he would have to walk upstairs all the time to the toilet. And being an old man, he was having problems with his waterworks, so that means he was going up the stairs every half an hour, so he had a piss pot there. So it smelled of piss a bit down there. And then you walk in, and it's crap, basically, rubbish everywhere. I never forget on the mantelpiece, which was strewn with all this crap, he had this bottom half from the waist down of a soldier. The top was gone. It was plastic. It was a child's toy, about that big, we're talking about. And it was standing there on the mantelpiece. And I picked it up to throw it away. He said, "Don't throw it away." I said, "Why?" He said, "That's good. That's worth something." And the only thing that he liked to watch on TV is all these shows where people are winning money. Oh, he really enjoyed that. "Did you see that she won £100? Got really excited with money. And he used to, as I said, he inherited the money from his father. And any money that was in his sister's account, he inherited that, and his mother's money as well. And so he ended up, and the business, what he sold, he ended up with all this money. So he was a millionaire. And his house that he lived in was worth over £500,000. Even though the father, I think, bought it for £3,000 at the time in the 50s. He had some beautiful furniture in there. I think it was called G-Plan. That was very expensive furniture in the 50s, which the working class used to buy. Or should I say the middle class used to buy. G-Plan. And things in those days, furniture and everything else, was made to last. So in the sitting room, I managed to talk him into letting me clean it up a bit. But the trouble with the Hoarder, they don't like you putting things away in a cupboard where they can't see it. They like it out everywhere. That's why you can't move in these people's places. It's everywhere, strewn all over the place, so they can see it. When they can see it, it makes them feel good. It makes them feel that they've got a lot of money, when really they're just living in a pile of shit. He told me that he could never pass a telephone booth without going in to see if he could get some money from the coin. What he would do, go in there and give it a good bang, and sometimes the money would drop through into the slot at the bottom, and he would grab the money, and he'd be talking all day about that. "Look what I found. I found 2 shillings, 2 bob. And the man's a millionaire. He's going on about 2 bob. Anyway, before he died, I think me going on about his dump of a place eventually got through to him eventually. But because he's tight-fisted, he got people in to do work for him. And the work was absolutely awful. If he's not paying the money, it's going to be rubbish. These people have never done this work before. And it was awful. But I said to him, when they redid the kitchen floor and painted the walls, as I said, it was awful. But it looked clean. The place looked clean and tidy compared to the pigsty that it was before they moved in, those people, and done their work. So I said to him, it looks quite good, even though it's rubbish what they've done. And it did. But he couldn't understand why it looked so bad, the work, and he was complaining. The trouble is with people like that, they want to spend the least amount of money and get the best quality of work. Impossible. Not that he would appreciate good quality of work, I don't think. What I did manage to do was stick a lot of these things up in the attic. Now, the attic really wasn't for putting stuff up there, but we managed to do it, put it all across these beams, the attic beams there. Well, I'm not going to fit it all into this episode, so look out for the next episode, number 2.